All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Marcine Mitchell, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Climate at the World Wildlife Fund. We welcome you today as we commemorate the formal re-entry of the United States to the Paris Agreement and look towards the future of climate action. Today, the commitment to the goals of the Paris Agreement is not only shared by our federal government, but by cities, states, and indigenous communities, by local businesses and multinational corporations, by institutions of faith, culture, higher education, and healthcare. The World Wildlife Fund has been proud to work alongside such storied organizations as CERES, Climate Nexus, RMI, World Resources Institute, the University of Maryland, and countless other partners in supporting climate ambition of thousands of leaders across the United States who have stood up to say, we are still in, and backed those words with action. And alongside these efforts, America's Pledge initiative, powered by Bloomberg Philanthropies, took on massive and essential task of showing the hard data of how the actions and ambitions of these leaders could continue to move the country forward. This morning, we'll hear from a wide variety of leaders who are bound together by this shared commitment to a whole of society approach to combating climate change. We'll also be joined by our special guest, White House National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy, and Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry. To start us off, I'd like to introduce the co-chairs of America is All In. We'll start with a recorded message from a leader who has been central to this cause, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Climate Ambition and Solutions, and founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies, Michael R. Bloomberg.
Thanks, Marcine. The U.S. is officially re-entering the Paris Climate Agreement today, but over the last 4 years, cities, states, businesses, and Americans across the country have continued pushing forward and cutting emissions. The reason is simple. They understand that fighting climate change strengthens our economy and protects people's health. 4 years ago, I joined the former governor of California, Jerry Brown, to launch an effort called America's Pledge, to bring people together and fill the leadership vacuum in Washington. The former administration refused to measure and report our emissions as we were required to under the Paris Agreement. So America's Pledge stepped in and did it. When the former administration cut off funding to the UN Climate Office, our foundation stepped in and supplied it. And when the former administration rolled back rules that cut emissions and toxic pollution, we stepped in to help cities and states take action on their own. Just before the election, America's Pledge produced a new report. It showed that Americans outside of Washington have kept us on track to reach our Paris commitment, and that with a climate leader in the White House, we can exceed it. Our latest analysis shows that a combination of federal and non-federal actions can cut U.S. emissions in half by 2030 versus 2005 levels. Fortunately, President Biden has put together a great climate team, and that includes Gina McCarthy and John Kerry. Our foundation has worked closely with both of them. When Gina was head of Natural Resources Defense Council, she was the key partner in our American Cities Climate Challenge, which provided $70 million in resources to help local leaders enact ambitious policies. When John was Secretary of State, we worked together to help global mayors collaborate on climate challenges and share smart strategies. We're glad to have them both with us today. We have a lot of work to do, and the more we support cities, states, businesses, and climate leaders across the country, the faster we can make progress. That's the goal of our new coalition, which is called America is All In. I'm glad to be co-chairing the effort with 3 leaders from the public and private sectors. Governor Jay Inslee, whose work in Washington State has set an example for states around the country. Charlotte Mayor Lyles, who is winner of the American Cities Climate Challenge and doing great work to push for more clean energy and transportation in her community. And LLoyd Dean, the CEO of Common Spirit Health, who has been a strong advocate for the role the business community can play in building a healthier, more sustainable, and equitable future. We're looking forward to working with the new administration to build on the progress we've made and to accelerate it in the lead up to this year's climate summit, COP26. That includes getting more cities, states, and businesses to commit to reaching net zero emissions, which is a focus of our foundation's work with the UN. It's going to take all of us. So let me end by thanking Gina, John, and everyone joining today for their leadership and partnership.
Thank you for those important words, Special Envoy Bloomberg. Next, I'd like to welcome another all-in co-chair who has elevated the climate issue like few others in the United States and has been working double duty as the founding co-chair of the U.S. Climate Alliance, Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State.
Well, thank you and good morning. It is a beautiful morning in America, in part meteorologically in some sense. I'm seeing the sun come up on the nice roseate hues of the Olympic Mountains here. But it's a beautiful morning because we know we are all in America, and we know that we have what we need to tame the climate beast. We have an incredible president in the White House. He's assembled a tremendous team of Gina and John Kerry. We know that we have entrepreneurs doing great work. We know that we have some of the most skilled mechanics, electricians, and plumbers and sheet metal workers in the world today. And we have leaders like our mayor and Mr. Dean that have joined us today to make sure that we play with the federal government as an allied league. And I just want to, if I can use a metaphor of baseball, we don't have a major league and a minor league when it comes to fighting climate change. We've got sort of an American league and a national league. We have a federal major league team, and we have a state and local major league team. And the reason I say that is that we swing a bat just as big as the federal government in the ability to fight climate change. We know that we have the ability to run our own transportation systems, which is absolutely critical to adopting green energy. We know that our efficiency standards in our businesses and our homes are local decisions to a significant degree. We know that we do our own R&D investments big time. So what we have learned through when we established the U.S. Climate Alliance in 2017, where we eventually ended up with 25 governors, representing 60% of the population of the United States, is that we could move the needle big time when it came to climate change. And now we need to up our game. And if I can at a moment, I think there could be some tendency that now we have a climate change champion in the White House. And by the way, I could not be more pleased at what President Biden is doing. He has touched every base. He has moved with an amazing speed. He's assembled a great team. But this should not be something that allows us to take our foot off the electric pedal. It means that we actually should move faster in our local communities. It means that we can, now that we're in teamwork with the federal government, we should increase our local commitments in so many different variety of ways, in our own grids, in our own universities, in our own transportation systems. So I look at this as being re-inspired, reinvigorated to up our game in the local communities. And we know what we can do in creating jobs in our local communities. We've done it over 130,000 clean jobs since the last couple of years with our U.S. Climate Alliance work. And we also can inspire other states and local communities. We know that we can ask them to join us as well. So I'm very excited about starting this coalition. I think it can help in a variety of ways. If I can just kind of list the ways I think we can help. One, we basically need to collaborate with each other. The more partnerships we have across state and city boundaries, the more successful we will be. We need to move markets, meaning that when we use market mechanisms to reduce climate change, we can maximize our performance by joining markets and joining policies so that they are more jointly effective. We know we need to enshrine state policies so that there's no backsliding here. Once we get this in policies and value systems, we don't tend to go backwards in America. And we need to protect, to have the flank of the federal government. Look, we do have sway with our members of the Senate and our members of the U.S. House. And we got to use that sway in the upcoming congressional activities. We know that the president's going to do some tremendous executive action, but he needs Congress as well. And we can maximize our effort in the US Congress as well. So I want to thank everybody on this call. I'm looking forward to working with my local partners. And let's go get them. Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and organize. We're all in.
Thank you, Governor, for your inspiring remarks. Our next speaker and co-chair is Mayor Vi Lyles of Charlotte, North Carolina. Under Mayor Lyles' leadership, the city of Charlotte has emerged as a true climate leader, implementing several key programs, from investing in public transportation to clean energy training programs. Charlotte is the winner of the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Change Challenge and an active member of Climate Mayors. Mayor Lyles.
Thank you, Marcine. I am honored to be a part of marking and to be serving as a co-chair for America is All In. Cities have been at the forefront of taking climate action, even in the absence of a federal commitment. And today, as we re-enter the Paris Agreement, we are taking a vital step to reestablish United States leadership on climate, rejoining the global community. And we're doing this for the collective, the efforts that we do together to tackle this crisis. But this is just our first step. The United States now has the opportunity to come to the table with credible and ambitious plans for how we will do our part. These last 4 years, my fellow mayors and I, with partners across the country in business, state and tribal governments, colleges and universities, and faith communities, have continued to step up to the plate. Specifically in Charlotte, where I serve as mayor, we have taken action by investing in solar energy and energy efficiency, accelerating the transition of our fleet, including our buses, to electric, creating workforce opportunities where they are most needed to focus on careers in clean energy. This includes paid training and jobs that pay a livable wage and support our residents with barriers to employment. And by building a walkable, bikeable city with accessible public transit. The Biden-Harris administration can look to cities as laboratories for policy and innovation. And we have proven solutions to the challenges of this crisis. We're excited to partner with them to deliver on the work that will create millions of new jobs in a clean economy, improve health and resilience of our communities, and ensure justice and equity for our residents that have had the most impact. Here in Charlotte and in cities around the country, we have also been on the front lines of this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And we know that recovering from this historic public health crisis cannot take us back to business as usual. At this time, our climate actions are even more in focus. Charlotte has doubled down on our goals to become zero carbon in our fleet and buildings by 2030, and to be a low carbon city by 2050. As a fast-growing region, we have no choice. Our increasing population density will further strain infrastructure already threatened by higher temperatures and increased precipitation intensity. This growth will also lead to increases in respiratory and heat-related illnesses associated with emissions and increasing temperatures. And the people who are most affected are already our most vulnerable citizens and residents. Climate change, just like COVID, is an equity issue affecting Black and Brown residents disproportionately. As mayors, we represent the whole of our communities. We embrace the whole of government and the whole of the city's approach to solving problems. Every city office, every city department, every city employee working together with our residents. And that is what this coalition is all about. Leaders coming together from diverse perspectives. And I am proud to help represent the voice of mayors within this powerful coalition. And I encourage my colleagues across the country to join us in this effort.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Lyles, and thank you for sharing your important experiences in Charlotte with us. Our final co-chair, Lloyd Dean, has dedicated his career to improving health and expanding access to healthcare for all. He is the CEO of Common Spirit Health, one of the nation's largest healthcare companies, and is a vocal advocate for health equity. Healthy people living on a healthy planet. Mr. Dean?
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking Michael Bloomberg for his leadership, and I want to also acknowledge all of my fellow co-chairs and today's esteemed speakers. I am very, very proud to serve as a co-chair of America is All In, and to be here today representing the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry has been focused on building healthier communities for decades. And I come before you to say that we are committed also to doubling down on protecting our environment. There is no question that there is an unbreakable connection between people and our planet. We see every day the effects on our communities of climate change. And we are all in on reducing our industry's carbon footprint as just one example of our commitment and dedication to this most important work. Environmental sustainability is key to health, and healthy communities is what we all must seek and strive for. It is a part of our mission as providers. Our vision of health equity is tied to creating a healthier and safer planet. We can and we must together reduce this danger of climate change. But I submit to you that we cannot wait. We must act now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our moment. And I am so proud that we are gathered here today in using our voice to be a voice of change. We must reach out and together engage in measurable and demonstrable change to ensure the safety of our planet. A healthier climate is essential for a patient and family's health. There is no question in my mind, with all of us coming together, we can and we must move forward with ensuring the safety of this planet and thereby ensuring future generations of health and healthy citizens of this great nation. I call upon all of us to do everything that we can, united, to ensure a planet that is not only safe, but allows for its members to be healthy as we live our lives. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dean, for those thought-provoking words. And thank you to all of our co-chairs for your leadership in America is All In, and for demonstrating what is possible when we all work together to tackle this crisis. America is All In includes institutions and leaders from nearly every corner of society. So I want to bring a few more individuals who have demonstrated similar commitments of climate action to highlight their work and the work of their organizations. I'd like to start us off with a special message from an essential constituency of this coalition and a consistent leader in this movement. Ms. Fawn Sharp, President of the Quinault Indian Nation and the National Congress of American Indians.
Oh, Yohuch, Anjak Hawishka. Hello to our friends and colleagues all across this country commemorating the U.S. formal re-entry into the Paris Agreement and the launch of a whole new era. America is all in. On behalf of the 574 sovereign tribal nations all across this country, I have the honor and privilege of serving as president of the National Congress of American Indians. I also serve as president of my own tribe, the Quinault Indian Nation, a tribal nation located in Western Washington. During the course of my 15-year presidency, I've had an opportunity to experience, plan, and strategize on how our community is going to contend with the impacts of climate change. And over the course of my presidency, I've had to declare multiple national states of emergency year after year. In fact, in the last 30 days, I've had to declare 2 national states of emergency. The first was when the Pacific Ocean encroached into our lower village, flooding our jail, our courthouse, our community center, the only store in town, and I had to evacuate elders out of harm's way. The second national state of emergency that I had to declare related to a landslide that has a potential of taking out the only access road to our main village. So you see, we are on the front lines of dealing with climate change. Not only my tribal nation, but indigenous peoples all around the world. And we have been waiting for this moment, this day of reckoning that we knew would come. And so we stand ready. And to our peers and partners, we ask that you take this moment to consider if climate policy is truly centered in your institution's operations and conduct, whether that's how you invest, how you do business, how you educate, and how you serve. Let's all think about how we can use our current situation to build back better than ever before. And to our friends in the new administration, we ask that you take advantage of our leadership and our expertise, supporting us so that we can implement transformative policies and programs. You can expect us to partner with you to raise and deliver on our shared ambition and to provide pressure when we need to do more, because we know this fight is long from over. We have a unique opportunity to embrace a whole of society approach to climate and recovery, strengthening our partnerships and our bonds. And I'm so very confident that together, when we are all in, we are going to be successful. Siakwil, thank you.
Thank you, President Sharp. And as you say, this work is truly far from finished, but the opportunity ahead of us is great. And thank you for your words. Let me turn to our panel now. So joining me are Ruth Ivory Moore, the Program Director for Environment and Energy at the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Katie Fallon, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Global Impact Officer at McDonald's, President Mark Mitsui of Portland Community College, and Mayor Sharon Weston Broom from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and co-chair of the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. So welcome, and we really appreciate all of you being with us today. I'd like to start with Ms. Ivory Moore and President Mitsui. So we just heard from our co-chairs who represented the state, city, healthcare provider, and from former Mayor Bloomberg, who sits at the nexus of cities and business and now on the international level. But of course, the coalition is much broader and much more inclusive. And so what would you describe as the most vital role for your contingencies, your congregations, your students, your faculty, that you could bring to this coalition? What do they offer in terms of mobilizing climate action? And what do they need from a coalition of this type? Ms. Ivory Moore?
Thank you, Marcine. The faith community brings to this table our passion, experiences, and expertise in this space. The faith community is on the front lines, in the trenches, and on the ground with those whose lives have been disrupted by a warming climate. Simply put, the faith community brings hope, healing, and renewal to those whose lives have been unsettled by the effects of the climate change. When the dust settles and the headlines change, we stay to provide support and services that are necessary for recovery and survival. We understand and know what it takes to build back better. Also, we recognize the reality that policies addressing climate change have taken on a partisan tone. We work to bridge this partisan divide by reaching across political, sectoral, and functional lines. We recognize our commonalities, embrace our diversities, valuing all life's worth and dignity. The faith community brings lived experiences. We're keenly aware that this watershed moment requires action by all, and we fight for sustainable solution. And we look forward to being at the table with the Biden-Harris administration in this critical time.
All right, President Mitsui.
Thank you, Marcine. Community colleges and universities are all in and can mobilize students, faculty, staff, and administrators in the missions of these institutions for climate action. These higher education institutions provide the research, engineering, workforce development, and leadership education to help power the transition to a more equitable carbon-free future. Take the manufacturing and maintenance of electric vehicles, for example. All along the supply chain, from component parts like batteries to final assembly of the finished car, talent is required. Researchers are needed for new breakthroughs, say in energy storage. Engineers are needed for design of the vehicle, and skilled technicians are needed to build and maintain those cars. For example, repairing an electric vehicle without electrocuting yourself, that's an important skill. Finally, leaders at every level of the organization are needed to keep turning out better and better electric vehicles. You could say the same thing about the design, construction, and maintenance of wind turbines or sustainable buildings or smart grids, which is why for every investment in the physical infrastructure for a carbon-free future, there needs to be another investment in the human infrastructure, the human capital needed for that transition. Without that investment in, say, community colleges and universities and the students we serve, ongoing equity and skills gaps are pretty much guaranteed. These gaps in turn would slow the transition to a carbon-free economy and exacerbate pre-existing social, racial, and economic disparities. I want to add that cultural institutions like museums, libraries, and zoos are also trusted institutions that serve millions of people each year and serve as key hubs for information and education and can be sources of generative community-based climate action. These institutions, particularly open access institutions like community colleges and public cultural institutions, are located in communities that are disproportionately impacted by climate change. Opportunities for upward mobility through good green jobs and reliable information for those served by these institutions is an important part of environmental justice.
Thank you. So I'd like to turn to Ms. Fallon and Mayor Broome. Business and city governments have a lot of opportunities within their organizations or their jurisdictions to address the climate crisis, whether it's through purchasing clean energy or electrifying fleets or investing in resilient infrastructure or nature-based solutions. But could you tell us what are the actions that are at the top of your priority list? What are the first steps you're going to take? Ms. Fallon?
Sure. Thank you, Marcine. McDonald's is proud to be a member of the All In Coalition and participate in this important conversation. We serve over 65 million customers a day across our nearly 40,000 restaurants globally. That's about 1% of the world's population daily. And our customers are fueling one of the largest food supply chains in the world. So we feel we have a special obligation to not only find more sustainable ways to feed our global populations, but also to help our farmers, our ranchers, and their communities with climate solutions that will keep their businesses resilient for generations to come. And just one example of this commitment in action, we're working with the USDA, with Target and Cargill in Nebraska to spearhead advanced soil health practices with farmers across 100,000 acres of land. And we'll hopefully be able to leverage those learnings at scale. And it's this dedication to our communities that drove us to become the first global restaurant company to set science-based targets in 2018 for both our restaurants and our supply chain. And it has also propelled us to really up our commitment to renewable energy in a big way. We just signed 5 US virtual power purchasing renewable energy agreements in 2019 and 2020. And the US PPAs alone are going to take us about halfway to our publicly stated greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for both our restaurants and our office buildings. And we're now on a path to bring our customers along with this on this journey with us. We designed a new net zero energy restaurant in Orlando that is allowing us to not only test new renewable technologies, but engage our customers in climate education in new and fun ways, like riding stationary bikes that illuminate our golden arches at that restaurant.
All right. Mayor Broome?
Well, first of all, just let me say I'm extremely excited about being on this panel for America's All In and this special day. Here in Baton Rouge, we have certainly been focused on adjusting to this new reality. We're seeing the effects of more intense rainfall, particularly in our warmer months. You know, we've seen recent studies from one of our very own here at Louisiana State University that shows a rise in temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, which is causing our rainstorms to drop a larger volume of water in our community. We've also heard this described as showers on steroids. And this can cause flash flooding, putting our homes at risk. So as we take steps to build more resilient infrastructure through our drainage, our hazard mitigation projects, we are also focused on treating the stormwater runoff. Effective water management is not only focused on managing the quantity of water, but also the quality. And so here in Baton Rouge, in the midst of our largest transportation infrastructure upgrade in history, Move EBR, we are spending $1 billion to expand, improve, and diversify transportation options in our community. And so this transportation upgrade also has a focus on managing and treating our stormwater. So we are implementing green infrastructure into our Move EBR program. And where possible, we are also building permeable sidewalks and roadways to better absorb stormwater and better treat it. And so this is just one example of how we are addressing the climate crisis in my community. I also have the privilege, of course, of being the co-chair of the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative, where we have mayors, over 100 along the length of the Mississippi River through 10 states. And of course, these other mayors have been hit hard by climate impacts. And so we too are working to, in our collective, to leverage our most important waterway and the world's most important river basin.
Great, thank you so much. So the final 2 questions, and I'm going to put this out to all of the panelists, and you can decide what you'd like to ask. So 2 questions that I have. One is, it's critical that we work as non-federal leaders across institutions and communities to coordinate action and empower a collective movement for change. And that's what America is All In is all about. So I'd love to hear some illustrations or specific examples you have that capture that sort of cross-sector community collaboration. And the other question that I have is, how do we as non-federal actors working together is important, but it's too big an issue, climate, for the federal government not to play its role. So what do we need from the federal government to advance and bold and equitable climate action? I'll start with Ms. Ivory Moore and pick which question you'd like, and let's make quick answers as we go through. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to give the examples regarding how we work together. And you're right, we have to work outside of our own sector. And we recognize that it is extremely important that we work together, and this fact cannot be overstated. We embrace the notion and that empowerment and solutions are obtained by all disciplines and sectors. For example, we do this as part of the faith-based community, as part of shareholder advocacy engagement, where we collaborate with others to develop strategies to accelerate just transition to a just and clean energy economy. As investors, we utilize shareholder engagement, focusing on environmental, social, and governance principles as we engage in dialogues with corporations to seek changes. Like one specific example is we've engaged with the utility sector as we found commonality in working together to achieve a just transition to get to a net zero economy. We engage with consultation with diverse international partners and learn from the past, from those charged with preserving history and culture, such as museums, and developing climate action policies that embrace strategies and provide for economic viability and community resilience. We leverage our experiences in country relationships, and we accompany those people and communities and work with NGOs and governments to influence and advance climate solutions.
Great, thank you. Ms. Fallon, quick comment.
We know we need everyone at the table, and for us, because of our size and reach, little changes we make can have a powerful ripple effect. And we've learned over the decades that when we look outside our system to partner with governments and NGOs and experts, that we can really accelerate change in a lasting way. In fact, over 20 years ago, McDonald's turned to Conservation International for help in finding sustainable whitefish sources for our filet of fish sandwiches, which is my personal favorite menu item. And CI provided the biodiversity expertise that we didn't have. And the success of that initiative led to a partnership to develop a broader strategy to look at sustainability across our whole supply chain. And today, because of that partnership 20 years ago, 99% of the fish we source for filet of fish comes from sustainably managed, wild-caught fisheries. So fast forward 20 years later, Conservation International is now one of many partners we have pulled together to meet our goal to source 100% of our coffee sustainably, working closely with the governments and NGOs across Central and South America. And another great example of the power of cross-sector collaboration is a shout out to you, Marcin, our strong partnership with WWF, which last year led to a collaboration with Walmart Foundation in Cargill to preserve grassland and scale up sustainable cattle grazing over 1 million acres in the Northern Great Plains. So thank you for your strong partnership there.
Thank you. President Mitsui?
Yes, if we are taking a look at partnerships, let's say between cities and the local community college and how we can work together and also take advantage of a new federal policy landscape, I could see investments in upskilling, particularly for those that are most marginalized economically, socially, and assist in a transition to a clean economy. For example, what if a city or metro transit authority wanted to convert its fleet of buses from diesel to electric? Where would a mayor or transit executive find the trained, skilled labor in order to do that? And what about maintaining those vehicles once they're on the road? Community colleges and partnerships with cities or transit authorities could do that with some investment in human capital from the federal government that catalyzes new partnerships that would allow for routes to upward mobility. Why shouldn't somebody who lives close to a transit hub or a bus depot or rides a metro every day be able to benefit from the transition from diesel to electric? Otherwise, there will be a whole segment of our population that risk being locked out of the next recovery in the next clean economy. I also wanted to briefly mention that new federal policy landscape afforded by the Biden administration and the connection between that landscape and local action is what's behind Second Nature's climate action pursuit. In particular, how higher education, colleges and universities can impact a global issue on a local level, and how can these efforts as a collective help inform national policy. Just wanted to put a plug in for that particular initiative.
Great. And finally, Mayor Broome.
Yes. Well, I would say that not only do we need the federal government, but I think it has to be a mutual partnership. It has to be reciprocal, that we need to work with the federal government. And this truly needs to be a partnership. When Secretary Kerry goes to Glasgow in November, he will need to show domestic climate performance in order to convince the world to work with the United States and create leverage. And nothing can do that better than trade. And that is where the Mississippi River Corridor can be a tremendous partner to help President Biden. Our river basin and our ports supply 40% of the world's commodity supply, moving over 164 billion worth of exports annually, just on the main stem waterway. So 1 in every 12 people on Earth ingest commodities produced in the Mississippi River Basin. And so we can use this as leverage for climate performance from Brazil, China, and others. Indeed, China is the Mississippi River Corridor's largest trading partner. And so I think we need to bring attention to the middle of the country. And if we can show the world that middle America is all in, that will be transformative.
Great. Well, thank you. And I want to thank each of you again for being such a critical part of this movement and for bringing all of your insights and experiences and examples here for all of us to learn. So I'd like to turn now and I'm honored to introduce 2 leaders who have carried the enormous task of coordinating our national and international efforts to reduce emissions and to accelerate climate progress and ambition. Administrator Gina McCarthy and Secretary John Kerry have unparalleled careers in service to the American people and are dedicated to the preservation of our planet. Gina McCarthy is the country's first national climate advisor, and in this new role, she is leading the coordination of President Biden's whole of government approach and domestic climate agenda. Thank you for being with us, Administrator McCarthy.
Thanks, Marcine. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. Is now a good time for me to say a few words?
Please do.
All right, excellent. First of all, I have to start by thanking Mike Bloomberg for all of his tremendous work. He's right. When I was at NRDC, we helped to advance the America's Pledge. But honestly, our relationship goes back a lot longer than that because he's provided tremendous leadership on the issue of climate for a very long time. And I want to thank Anthony Williams as well, who's been a terrific person to move forward with America's Pledge and all the ability that they've been able to provide to keep us hopeful over the past few years at a time when the federal government didn't want to engage on issues of climate and in fact did just the opposite. What they were able to do was just maintain a real sense of vibrancy and hope at the state and city level, which made all the difference in the world, not just to the United States in terms of our ability to make sure that we were continuing to build the foundation forward that would allow us to jumpstart, which is what we're going to do, our climate efforts. But they also just continued to give everybody a real sense of hope, especially me, who was watching all of our rulemakings being questioned. You know, it just continued to make sure that we were acting like the United States of America, maybe not as a nation, but certainly at the state and local level, to continue to innovate, to continue to push. And as a result, during those prior 4 years, we didn't lose a tremendous amount of ability to move forward on clean energy. And in fact, if you looked at 2020, clean energy was winning continuously all over the place, and jobs were continuing to grow in the clean energy sector. And so with that as sort of the backdrop, I think it made people realize, even in the COVID-19 pandemic, in the challenge we were facing with environmental justice, that we had an opportunity with the Biden administration to actually continue to learn from states and cities and to then do, as I just indicated, jumpstart our ability to move forward. And I am excited that I have an ability to work with my great friend and colleague, Senator Kerry, who's actually going to deliver the international community again and bring us back in to the fold. It's exciting to have today be Paris Day. We're going to be celebrating that, I'm sure. And to me, it gives us an ability to continue to move forward nationally and internationally with what we know to be some actions that have to be taken quickly, have to be taken decisively, if we expect to actually have the kind of breadth and speed in our actions that climate demands. But honestly, we would not be where we are today without America's pledge. And I am welcoming another all-in effort of America All In. I think it is a great complement to the work that's already been done. But honestly, our job right now is to make sure that we are taking the actions we need to, but being sensitive about connecting dots. This is what Joe Biden brought to the table when he ran for president, and this is our marching orders domestically. I am running a national climate office that is about a whole of government approach, just as yours is making sure that across our society, we're working together. One of the most exciting things is the diversity and inclusivity of the group that you are now pulling together. And we're going to learn from that, because President Biden's job is to protect all people, not just Republicans or Democrats. It is bringing people together, relying on science to make decisions. And it's all about reaching families, reaching you where you are. One of the greatest values of states, and particularly city level work, is that you bring climate to a personal, a real, and a relevant level. This is what we need to do. While we're going to move forward to do everything we can to establish the system that we need to actually get a strong nationally determined contribution that we can be proud of, and I can hand to John Kerry to run with internationally. But first and foremost, it's about remembering that we're dealing with a country that needs to heal. We're dealing with a health crisis today, and we have to fix the health crisis of climate. And if we work together, we can make sure that we don't just protect the planet, but we grow jobs with clean energy, that we do it in a way that's going to rebuild our economy, give people that great 4-letter word, hope, again. And that's what we're going to do together. So thank you for letting me be part of this. Again, congratulations on everything you've accomplished. I'm hugely excited. We will move the federal government forward, and we will have you not as a side event at the next COP, but we will have cities and states standing with us as one country. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Administrator McCarthy, for those inspiring words, and congratulations on your new role. We're really looking forward to supporting you and all the great work we know that is coming. We've had some questions come in from coalition members, and I'd like to pick at least just one and see if you could answer that question for us. So the question is, what policies and investments do you see as opportunities to address economic transition and equitable workforce development, to both support remote and rural communities around the country, as well as supporting marginalized urban communities, and to close those equity and skill gaps? And how would you work with non-federal leaders, such as community colleges, local governments, members of our coalition, on these issues?
Well, that was a big question. So let me indicate a few things. One is there are lots of ways in which we can move forward on climate. We have the entire breadth of the federal government now available to us. So it's about looking at how our programs and policies are structured to make sure that we're thinking about really key things, not just what we need to do to shift to clean energy, but also where are those benefits going to go? President Biden made a commitment that when we're investing in clean energy, 40% of that investment is going to be in environmental justice communities. And that is, Marcine, as you indicated, these marginalized communities that have been disinvested in, that are in the crosshairs of both traditional pollution, as we can see from COVID-19. They're the ones most burdened, but also in the crosshairs of climate. So it is about making sure that our investments are wide open, about ensuring that people who need those investments the most are the ones that are going to get it. And it's also about communities like in our rural areas that are suffering from traditional challenges like lack of water, wastewater, threats of wildfires, challenges that the energy transition is making. We are not going to leave any community or any worker behind, which is why if you look at the executive orders, we've moved forward on a number of things. We've moved forward to protect our public lands. We've moved forward to make sure that we are tackling some of the key pollution issues that will make it available for clean energy. We are looking forward to standard settings in our car sector. We're looking to make sure that methane is addressed quickly. We're looking forward to opportunities for better housing, especially for low income. And how do we invest in that again? So this is a system of standards, and it is a system of investments where we're going to specifically make sure that we're growing jobs, we're protecting workers who are in that transition so that we can build new jobs, as you've seen in one of our executive orders that the president's already put out, is we're investing in these things already. We're already making sure that we have jobs available in communities that may otherwise be left behind. We are making sure that we invest in our research and development for innovative technologies. Our money is going out already to get basically low emission transit, get our buses where they need to be, because it protects everybody. So we're going to keep working forward, Marcine, but there's no silver bullet. This is all about making sure that we're thinking about more than one thing, because the American public needs a safe future, a healthy future, one where they can put food on their table, one where they have access to high-paying jobs, and one that's going to restore our country and our economy in a strong way. So standards or investments are it. Nothing's off the table.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Administrator McCarthy, for your remarks and for joining us here. I have a couple other questions that are for the co-chairs, and I'd like to start off with Governor Inslee. Looking at the year ahead, what are you most excited to work on with the federal government to accelerate climate action, both locally, federally, or internationally? Governor Inslee?
Well, after hearing Gina there, I'm most excited to see her magic of getting the entire federal government working for us. I'm so pleased that she's in that leadership position. By the way, I forgot to thank Mike Bloomberg for what he's done for all of us too. And I want to say that watching him work for the last year is really, really important. So I would say a couple things. Number one, the modernization and the greening of our electrical grid system, I would put at the top of our ability to move the needle federally and in our local communities. And working with the federal government to design the system to do that is absolutely imperative. We've made some really big steps in our state of net zero by 2030 and carbon free by 2045. And we look forward to working with our federal partners in that direction. I would think that's probably the biggest step we can take. And I'm confident that the president and Gina and everyone else is going to help us dramatically in that direction. But I think of that as kind of short term. I know that sounds long term, but I think of it actually as a little bit of short term by creating the regulatory impetus, the regulatory appetite, the regulatory demand to bring new technologies to modernize our grid system. But there is a second part of this that isn't maybe so much in the state realm. And that is the R&D investment that we have to make to get the last few miles of a truly carbon-free future. We do have to have additional R&D in addition to these deployment actions that we will be working on at the state level. I mentioned that because we're going to need Congress to help finance that, and we ought to be helping everybody to get that job done. So I'm excited about the next year.
Great, thank you so much. Any very brief comments from our other co-chairs, Mayor Lyles or Mr. Dean?
Yeah, I just make one real quick comment in terms of thinking about the question. Number one, right before us right now, of course, is this pandemic. And I think when we think about healthy communities, when we think about the work that has been mentioned by all of the esteemed speakers relative to climate change and the various initiatives, I think that one of the things that we must do in parallel is to ensure the safety and the health relative to addressing getting communities vaccinated, getting vaccines there. We are working hand in hand with the administration to ensure that vulnerable communities, particularly communities of color, are getting equal and immediate access. Because as I said earlier, the strength of our community is an integrated and a coordinated effort. It is not left up to one sector. So continuing the work that is on our agenda, working with the administration and past speakers and Gina and others to share best practices and to make sure that we understand that we are not just in a community, we must be of the community.
Great. Well,
Marcine, this is by Lyles, and I'd just like to say that I'm really grateful for the federal, for President Biden's lens of equity. This is really something that we are very actively engaged in. And if we can take that lens of equity and apply it to guiding principles and the actions and the innovations that we can take in support of with the federal government, I think that this next year is going to be very exciting for us. But I really have to say that the Biden-Harris administration has been so supportive of this effort and all of the good things that we can do. We need to have that strong federal partnership continue and really be impactful. So I'm looking forward to all of our work.
Well, thank you. And I'm so happy to be able to introduce to you now John Kerry. John Kerry is leading President Biden's climate agenda on the international stage as the special presidential envoy for climate. So welcome, Secretary Kerry, and thank you for joining us.
Well, Marcine, thank you very, very much. As I know Gina is, and I'm sure Jay Inslee, who I see there, we're all super excited about this day, and I'm delighted to be with all of you. I know many of you were at Le Bourget when Laura Fabius gavelled this in. It was historic then, and because of what you all have done over the course of the last 4 years to keep things alive, it is still historic today. It was the product of an awful lot of folks pulling together, and I'm delighted now to be working with Gina. We're teaming up here to make sure we're going to present the best foot forward that we can for our country, and every day I am communicating, she's communicating like crazy with all of you and a lot of folks here domestically, and I'm on the Zooms and phone and Google Meets and whatever to sit down with leaders around the world. I just left the G7 meeting with the president, and all of the leaders talked about climate, talked about Glasgow, and talked about the importance of this year. So look, for the last 4 years, there were a lot of times when a lot of us thought that the failure of this enterprise might rest on one word. The word was Trump. But 5 years later, the Paris Agreement and the international climate regime are not only just standing, because cities and states, the governors, Governor Inslee, Governor Brown, Governor Cuomo, others, all pulled together. And I think we are still in, which is what we stepped up and said the day after Trump pulled out, became much more than a slogan. It became an unbelievable grassroots enterprise. And at that time, back in 2017, there was only one state and 33 cities that had committed to get 100% of their energy from clean sources. Now, because of all the work you've done, 13 states plus Puerto Rico and 165 cities have 100% clean energy commitments. And since 2017, 16 states have passed or committed to pass regulations that would deal with HFCs. And as everybody knows, Kigali Agreement could mean, the full implementation of it can mean literally saving 0.5 degree centigrade for the planet. So it is no BS to say that you guys, all of you, everybody who lifted and worked and cajoled and pleaded and spoke to their friends and pushed, really created something that showed the real face of our country, even before 81 million Americans said enough is enough and went and put President Biden in place to help lead us here. So now we need you to make all in, even something more urgent and with even greater meaning. I guarantee you that Gina and I and the rest of the team come to this job with a lot of humility, and humility because obviously the United States pulling out did have consequences. It hurt us personally, it hurt us as a nation, it hurt the movement. But we also come to this work with honesty because we know that just doing Paris is not enough. If we did everything set out in the Paris Agreement, and we're not, but if every country delivered, we'd still see a warming on planet Earth to about 3.7 degrees centigrade. Just, it's catastrophic. And the only thing we can do now is focus our attention in this extraordinary ongoing to Glasgow to make sure that we keep 1.5 degrees, which the greater consensus is now clearly saying is what we have to achieve. It's not good enough even to do.
Hi, I think we might have lost Secretary Kerry. Okay, well, I'm sorry that we have. And we're at the end of our time here. So I just want to thank everybody for participating in this event. It's been a really great event and we've learned a lot from everybody coming in. And as we take the opportunity to recognize this momentous nature of this occasion, I want to close the event with a message from Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto. He's a leader who has time and again demonstrated commitment to climate action and has been a national standard bearer for the Paris Agreement. So, Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto. Do we have the recording?
Today, the United States has returned to the International Paris Climate Agreement. And that is good news for Pittsburgh. What we've badly needed is national leadership that regarded the climate crisis seriously and did its utmost to fix the problem. We've had that leadership at the state level and at the local level, and now we have it at the national level as well. And we can't wait to roll our sleeves up and get to work.